So, in the last 48 hours, Richard Tice has done the rounds on every major Sunday political show in the country, trying to defend Nigel Farage's £5 million gift from the Thailand-based crypto billionaire. Sky News, BBC, talkRADIO, 3 interviews, 3 different ways of handling the same scandal. In one of them, the presenter actually defended Farage's position for Tice before he had the time to defend it himself. In another, the presenter caught Tice in a flat-out lie about what he'd said on national TV less than 24 hours earlier, and in all 3, Tice keeps repeating the same line, that the public has already heard all of this and chosen reform anyway. Which would be a fair point if the public had actually been given a chance to hear it. And majority, unless you're watching this channel, they haven't. So, let's start with the easiest one to prove. This morning on talkRADIO, Julia Hartley-Brewer asked Richard Tice about Glenn Gibbons, the Reform councillor in Sunderland who suggested on social media in 2024 that Nigerians should be melted down to fill potholes. Gibbons was suspended on Sunday night, 2 years after writing it. Hartley-Brewer asked Tice why on Sunday morning on the BBC he had described the post as daft. Here's what he said.
I have to say, I was very disappointed to hear your language about this in the media rounds yesterday. And this is your Sunderland councillor, Reform councillor called Glenn Gibbons, who was only just last night has been actually suspended. When you were asked about this yesterday on the media round, you described it at one point as daft, daft things like this. An elected councillor for any party, let alone your own party, talking about melting Nigerians down to fill potholes. Are you really saying you think that's daft and not absolutely disgustingly, outrageously racist?
I wonder if you correctly heard the interview, Julia, because you would have heard me say very clearly in that interview with Laura Kunsberg that I condemn anything that is inappropriate and wrong, and that covered the whole gamut.
You dismissed it as daft things.
No, Julia,
yes,
absolutely not. Julia, I did not. I very clearly said, and there's a whole load of nonsense and lies put out on social media, I clearly said I condemn anything that is inappropriate and wrong. And that obviously covered that message.
He's calling Hartley-Brewer a liar and the rest of the press. A whole load of nonsense and lies put out on social media. He says that they're liars too. He claims that he was absolutely robust. He said that she got it wrong. Here's the BBC interview from the day before.
We have an internal party process, but here's the point.
Well, it's not a very good one if somebody who expresses that can be elected.
We've heard all this smearing and the sneering. Let me tell you what people are really concerned about.
No, forgive me.
Laura,
that's not
I'm going later to a campaign against the scourge of anti-Semitism, right, which is the greatest threat facing us here in, particularly in London, but elsewhere across the UK. That's what people are really concerned about. We've stood up strongly for the Jewish community. And if people have said daft things, of course it'll be looked at.
Daft things. The deputy leader of Reform UK Limited described the racist post about melting Nigerians as a daft thing on the BBC at 9 in the morning. 24 hours later, he went on a sympathetic right-wing radio show and called the press liars for accurately quoting it back to him. Watch the response. There's no apology there. There's no, I should have called it racist, not daft. Tice's instinct is to call the questioner a liar. That's the instinct of someone who's been let off so many times he assumes the receipts will never appear. The receipts always appear.
You dismissed it as daft things.
No, Julia,
yes,
absolutely
you did.
not. Julia, I did not. I very clearly said.
And if people have said daft things, of course it'll be looked at.
Which brings us to why Tice has that instinct. Because of yesterday, he was on with Sky News and Trevor Phillips, and what happened on that show pretty much explains it. Phillips opened with this in the interview.
I mean, I've already lavished praise on you and said how wonderful you are and all the rest of it, so let's get past that point.
The real moment comes when Phillips gets to the 5 million. Listen carefully because this is on the flagship Sunday political show of one of the 2 big commercial broadcasters in Britain. And the question is currently in front of the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner.
And I know you're irritated by the many questions that are being asked about Nigel Farage's £5 million gift. I also know he didn't have to declare it, so you don't have to tell me that.
I know he didn't have to declare it, so you don't have to tell me that. The Parliamentary Standards Commissioner is right now deciding whether Farage had to declare it. The Electoral Commission is considering opening its own investigation. The Conservatives referred them last week. Labour have said that he broke the rules again. 2 regulators are actively considering the question, and Trevor Phillips just told Richard Tice on Sunday morning TV not to bother explaining because Phillips already knows the answer. That isn't journalism. That is the host of a political programme answering for the guest before the guest has to, and then asking as a follow-up whether the host himself should ring up Christopher Harbone for £5 million.
Oh, so if I ring him up and I say, can I have £5 million for no reason at all, I stand a chance?
Trevor, you can ask you can ask whoever you want.
This is the same broadcaster where Cathy Newman had Farage walk out of an interview about his gifts on the 6th of May, where Beth Rigby got him to call the questioning a waste of time on the 8th. 2 Sky journalists pressed Farage hard enough that he publicly lost his composure within 48 hours. The flagship Sunday show on the same network gave his deputy a pre-emptive defence 3 days later. That's why Tice thought he could just lie today, on Monday, and he's been trained just to do that. What makes the Phillips interview look worse is what happened at the other channel on the same time. Laura Kuenssberg had Tice on the BBC the same morning. Whatever you think of her generally, and it isn't very high in my opinion to be honest, she did actually press him on the $5 million the way Phillips wouldn't. She asked him whether other politicians have to declare gifts even before their MPs. She pointed out that Farage had declared the trip to Belgium and a ticket to an awards ceremony, but not £5 million. She raised the Catherine West allegation that some of the money had been spent on campaigning. She asked Tice twice whether there might be other undeclared gifts of a similar size. Tice's answer to that one was this. And watch his little smirk as well.
Are there any other undeclared gifts of millions of pounds that Mr Farage might not have written down for the authorities?
I look after my own finances, and Nigel looks after his. He knows he's complied with the rules.
That is what a non-denial sounds like. And then Kuenssberg got to the fact that breaks Tice's whole voters have heard this defence. In January of this year, the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards published a report on Nigel Farage. Daniel Greenberg, the Commissioner, found Farage had breached the MP's Code of Conduct 17 times. £380,000 of undeclared external income. Greenberg ruled that the breaches were inadvertent. Farage's explanation was that he doesn't do computers and was let down by a very senior member of staff. So when Kuenssberg pointed out on Sunday that Farage seems to have a habit of not following the rules carefully when it comes to money, she wasn't smearing anyone. She was reading from the Commissioner's report. Tice's reply was that Nigel was crystal clear and that we are crystal clear. Nigel doesn't need to be clear. The rules are. They have been all along. Tice's master defence across all these interviews is the same line. He repeats it half a dozen times. Voters have all heard this, they've doubled down and they want more Nigel.
And voters have looked at this and they've said, thank you very much for keeping Nigel safe.
But that's not my question.
Please, can we... it is the question because you keep on with this sort of, trying to smear us and sneer us and libel us. We're sick of it. And the voters are sick of it, Laura.
It's not
and they've
a
just
smear,
delivered.
Mr. Tice.
They've literally delivered a massive, massive rebuttal against the establishment media. And they said, we want more reform, more reform-led councils doing great work. It's a big responsibility. That's what we're focused on.
Here's the problem. The Guardian's Anna Isaac broke the 5 million story on Wednesday the 29th of April. The local elections were on Thursday the 7th of May. 8 days. And in those 8 days, this is what Nigel Farage did. He dropped out of a planned appearance on Kuenssberg the Sunday before the election. He walked out of an interview with Cathy Newman on the 6th. He called Beth Rigby's questions a waste of time on the 8th. He did not sit down with a hostile interviewer about the 5 million at any point between the story breaking and the polls closing. The voters didn't double down on the gift. They voted before the case had been heard. The man at the centre of the story spent the campaign week sprinting from anyone who tried to ask him about it. Tice can keep saying voters have spoken, but they haven't. Not on this. They need to have been asked. Maybe breach number 18 will also be inadvertent. Maybe there'll be an explanation involving computers and a senior member of staff, and the Commissioner will decide. In the meantime, Reform's deputy leader has spent the weekend lying about what he said on TV, dodging questions about whether there are gifts, and being told by a Sky News presenter that he doesn't need to defend his boss because the presenter has already done it for him. On Monday, Julia Hartley-Brewer asked him the simplest possible question. If the 5 million is genuinely for Farage's security, show us the receipts. Just produce the cost. End of story. It goes away. Here's Tice's answer.
Also fully aware of the threats that he faces. However, you can really easily clear this up, can't you? Nigel Farage can just present to, I don't know, an independent figure, some sort of independent figure, whether it's parliamentary standards or whatever, the receipts for the cost of his security, which we know is in the hundreds of thousands every year. Present those receipts, show that that is where the money is going. Job done, no issue, move on. Why don't you do that?
Do you want the receipts for my underwear as well? Do you want the receipts for my socks? I mean, Julia, that's ridiculous.
Hold on a minute. When Lord Ali was giving free suits to the Prime Minister, free gear care, we all had a lot to say about it.
Yeah, but
I think
Julia,
it's completely legitimate to say what is this money being spent on.
That's because he was an elected politician subject to the ministerial code. It's apples and pears. You know that. Nigel was not a politician.
Within
he
a
had not
year
made
of
the decision to
election,
come
he
into
was
politics.
required to register if there was any
Julia, if you read
query
the
about
rules,
how it could be seen.
Read the rules.
I've read the
are
rules.
crystal clear. If it's a gift and if it's not to do with politics, then it does not have to be declared.
£5 million receipts for his socks from the man who says that he's been wronged by the establishment media. And so if you've made it this far, you've already done more scrutiny on this story than Trevor Phillips did on Sunday morning. So thank you. And if you want to keep seeing doing these, then please subscribe and maybe hit the membership button and support the channel too.